Hello, everybody. You're on the mic. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about freedom freedom to choose, freedom to choose to live one's life as they see fit, the freedom to make the choices that you feel are best for you, the freedom to accept the rewards and consequences of those decisions. You know, as we've been going through the pandemic, over the last couple months here, things have started to get a little testy of late. All around the country, you start seeing, people protesting. We saw in Michigan where you did have some, you had protesters, including some armed protesters, getting into the state capitol to basically voice their, objection to, as the Michigan state legislature was voting whether or not to um, extend Governor Whitmer's emergency declaration. They ultimately chose not to. Um, Now she's going to try to force their hand, and then we're going to also see in court cases there. See some protests out here in California. Um, People protesting the closures of the beaches. We also heard over the weekend situation in Stillwater, Oklahoma, where where basically protesters were getting to the point of threatening violence, to the point where government officials decided to amend restrictions instead of requiring face masks. Of course, um, they were going to choose to encourage people to wear face masks, which I think is a much better option. You know, as Americans, we pride our freedom. We value our freedom very well. And the responses with the protests and even with armed protest and even people getting to the point where they feel they have to, threaten other people. That's in response to what they believe is to be a tyrannical government. Um, they say, well, we want to slow the spread. We don't want you spreading it back to, those who are more vulnerable. Well, here's the thing. Everybody, our Constitution guarantees us the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in that also means that we have the right to make the choice for ourselves what to do in regards to that. Whether or not we choose to wear a face mask in public, whether or not we choose to stay home and self isolate. Now, if you are symptomatic and you are sick, you probably should stay home. It's still ultimately your choice. It comes down to everybody's individual choice of whether or not to do that. As a business, you have a choice of whether or not to comply to, make to whether or not to, make your consumers or your customers wear a mask or, you know, you know, um, maintain social distancing, which I personally don't have an issue with that. I just think that's common courtesy beyond the hygiene reasons. You don't necessarily, nobody needs to be up in other people's personal space. But keep in mind, and there are some businesses that recognize this too. Keep in mind that if you choose to try to force compliance on certain things, people also have the freedom to make choices to find businesses that are more constitution friendly. You know, if a store tells me they won't let me, if a store should tell anyone that they will not let them in because they won't wear a face mask, that person has the right to find a business that will let them in without a face mask. You know, if a person chooses not to wear gloves and you say, no, you can't come in here unless you're wearing gloves, then, the person has a choice to find a store, find another business to do business with that, that will let them in without gloves on, you know. People, we're now seeing that many states are starting to reopen, which I'm glad, because as I've been warning people on some of my previous videos, and I've talked about this, if you try to force compliance, you try to lock people down for too long, they will revolt. And it could become a very nasty and bloody revolt at that. So I'm glad to at least see that number of states are starting to reopen. Now here in California, we have situations where there are even some counties that, despite Governor Newsom trying to say no, the whole state still has to lock down. There are some counties here, like Modoc, that are actually bucking him. Here in California, we have actually 4 counties that still, to this day, after months of this, still have no confirmed corona cases. We have two counties that have, so we have 4 that have none, which are Modoc, Lassen, Sierra, and Trinity, that have no you know no coronavirus cases whatsoever, and therefore should be allowed to open up if they want to do that. We have 2 that still only have one, Tehama and Del Norte. And from what I understand, the one case in Del Norte has recovered, so there's no active cases in Del Norte either. There's still a number of those smaller northern counties that are in single digits, and the majority of those have already recovered. And people, I know Governor Newsom comes out and says, well, the deaths are not just a statistic, that's a life. Well, newsflash, we're all going to die at some point in our life. That's a fact. You can't live fearing death. We're all going to die someday. Whether or not that's today, nobody knows. But to sit there and stop the world for a virus is ridiculous. We have the freedom to choose how we live our lives. And if we want to get back to normal, like right now, we should have the freedom to do that. And there are those people who say, well, you're infringing. Well, if you're so afraid of the virus, you're so afraid of getting sick, you have the freedom to make the choice to stay home then. Just as you shouldn't force people to stay home if there's no need for them to, or there's no reason for them to. They're not sick. They're not, they're not contagious. They're asymptomatic. If they want to go out and live their lives, they should have the right to. Just as if you feel that by living your life you should stay home, that's your right too. Whatever choice you want to make for yourself, you have the right to do so. That is what is called freedom. If you want to go out and live your life as you normally would, you want to go to work and make a living and make the money for your family to where you can support your family, and you have properly weighed the rewards and consequences of that decision, that is your right to do so. People say, well, we're just trying to protect people from passing it to the more vulnerable populations, like, the terminally elderly. And I talked about this earlier. I talked about this in, I think, a previous video. There's something, again, you should consider. So the terminally ill elderly, that basically means they're already suffering from a disease that's going to kill them. So basically the point being is that if they get the coronavirus, it's pretty much an instant death sentence. So now with that means that they're going to suffer more in the short term, but it's also going to lead to a quicker death. So again, I ask people to consider this. What's more compassionate? A quicker death with more intense suffering, or a longer, more prolonged suffering death? What's really the more compassionate thing there? Now, if the person wants to be treated for coronavirus, that's fine. That's their choice. Again, their choice, their freedom. But you can't punish those who are healthy, who can go on living their lives normally. You can't force them to do things that infringes on their freedom either. That includes forcing them to stay home if they don't have to. If they are healthy and they can go to the gym and do what they need to do at the gym. They can go out about and they can go into a grocery store or into any business and do what they want, with or without a mask if they so choose, with or without gloves if they so choose, with applying hand sanitizer if whether or not they choose to. People are responsible enough to handle themselves. We don't need a nanny state. We have the freedom to do what we want and to choose how we live our lives. That's what the Constitution guarantees us. The reason we have a Second Amendment is to preserve those rights. If the government tries to get too tyrannical, as we've seen in Michigan, we've seen here in California, we've seen especially more the liberal-leaning Democrat-controlled states. They've become tyrannical. That's why you had armed protesters at the Michigan rally. That was a message to Governor Whitmer and to those who would seek to deny them their freedom, that they are willing to do whatever it takes to preserve that freedom. And the Constitution gives us that right to do so. That's why liberals hate the Constitution, because they cannot control the people. You do not have the consent of when you do not have the consent of the governed, that's when you lose your power. As Wayne Allen Root put it, the American citizens are not your serfs. You serve us. We do not serve you. That is what is freedom. Some people were saying that maybe I was overreacting to this, saying all this back when I did early on. But that's only because those in power will have a tendency to try to assert, reassert, or gain more power in times of crisis like this. And if you just let it go too long, by the time you realize what's going on, it's too late. You're no longer in a position to fight back. That's why you need to fight back early and often. Okay? We also have the right, if we want, when we vote, you have the right to choose if you want to mail in vote or if you want to go to the polling place. You have that right to do so. And, we saw in Wisconsin, well, they're saying, well, all these people got sick because, they were allowed to go vote. Well, yeah, those people made that choice. They probably understood. They weighed the rewards versus the consequences, and they chose to exercise their right to vote. You know, so that's just the point I want to get across here, is that we have the freedom to do what we want. We have the freedom to live our lives as we see fit. And a warning to those who would encroach upon that: you best be ready for the fight of your life, because that is exactly what you will get. Now, with that being said, um, let's move on to something a little more happier. Let's look to the past to see what we can find on this day in each history, this May 4th, 2020. So, what happened on this date in history? Some closer stuff here. So, on this date in 2010, the Outsiders, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, defeated Matt Morgan for the TNA World Tag Team Championship. Morgan chose to defend the championships by himself when his partner Hernandez was injured. So he lost, fighting 1-on-2, making a valiant effort. He unfortunately still lost the titles to the Outsiders on TNA World Tag Team Championship. That happened on this date 10 years ago in 2010. And on this date in 2016, the 70th issue of Elephant Men, published by Image, went on the newsstands. On this date in 2016, which was 4 years ago, 70th issue of Elephant Men went on the newsstands at a cover price of $3.99. So, from Image Comics, a 28-page, comic. So, with that being said, you guys can check the links below. If you want to contact me directly, you can DM me on my Discord. DM me on my Discord. Also, I'm still promoting a bunch of different dub companies, as Funimation is not the only game in town. And of course, right now it's a good time to get caught up on a lot of animes, even older animes that maybe you never seen before. Also, I'm trying to think here. I'm still promoting the GoFundMe's. As always, guys, never feel like you have to donate. If it's on your heart to do so, and you have the means to, please consider donating. If you if you've already donated, please consider donating again. And if you cannot donate, to help out the cause by sharing the link. And sharing is caring. And you never know, maybe somebody in your circle of friends might decide they want to help out as well. Um, and with that, if you guys like this content, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. I always look forward to the conversations with you guys as long as they're civil and respectful. Um, I hope I hope you guys will enjoy this video and learn some things from it. And with that, I hope to catch you guys on Friday for the premiere of Voices Big and Small. This week I'll be highlighting the career of Jimmy Zoppi, aka James Carter Cathcart, aka Billy Beach, from the New York area. So until tomorrow, guys. Bye.